Hey, what is up, everyone? I hope you guys are doing well. Today we have a unique story narrated by my friend Frederick. I hope you guys enjoy it and watch till the end, guys.
In the grim darkness of the far future, there is a question that echoes across a million worlds, whispered in the shadows of recruiting chapels, and screamed in the agony of transformation chambers. What does it take to become the Imperium's most powerful weapon? What price must be paid to stand as humanity's bulwark against the endless night? The answer is not simple. It cannot be measured in years or counted in surgical procedures, though both numbers would be staggering. It cannot be weighed in pain endured, though the suffering involved transcends anything a normal human mind could comprehend and survive. To become one of the Emperor's chosen warriors, one of the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, requires a transformation so complete and so profound that it challenges the very definition of what it means to be human. Picture a child, perhaps 10 or 11 years old, standing in the harsh light of a selection chamber. This child has survived trials that would kill most adults. He has endured tests of strength, courage, and will that have claimed the lives of hundreds, perhaps thousands of his peers. His body is covered in scars, his hands calloused from weapons training that began almost before he could walk. He is already a warrior by the standards of his world, already a killer, already hardened beyond what most civilized humans will ever experience. And he is not yet ready. He is merely raw material, crude ore that must be refined through fire and blood into something greater, something terrible, something necessary. The Imperium of man spans 1,000,000 worlds and countless billions of souls, yet it teeters on the brink of annihilation every moment of every day. From the Eye of Terror, the Chaos Gods pour forth their legions of demon and traitor. From beyond the galactic rim, the tyrannid hive fleets descend like locusts that devour entire civilizations. In the eastern fringe, the Tau expand with disturbing efficiency. In the webway and on maiden worlds, the Eldari pursue their inscrutable schemes. Orc hordes gather and surge across the void with savage joy. Necrons awaken from their tombs, ancient and unstoppable. And within the Imperium itself, rebellion and corruption gnaw at the foundations of order, like rot in the bones of a dying giant. Against these threats, normal humans stand no chance. A guardsman with a las rifle is brave, certainly. He fights with courage that deserves to be celebrated in song and story. But courage alone cannot stop a tyrannid carnifex, cannot match a chaos space marine in combat, cannot stand against the reality, warping powers of a greater demon. Normal humans can die in their billions defending a single world, and sometimes it is not enough. This is why the Emperor, in his infinite and terrible wisdom, created the Adeptus Astartes, not as soldiers, but as weapons, living, thinking weapons that could turn the tide of any battle, that could inspire entire armies through their mere presence, that could accomplish missions that entire regiments of normal troops could not. They are the Emperor's finest, his angels of death, and the cost of creating even one of them is staggering beyond measure. The transformation from human child to space marine is not a single event, but a process that unfolds across years, involving dozens of surgical procedures, countless hours of conditioning and training, and modifications that reach down to the genetic level. Each step of this process has been refined over 10,000 years, perfected through the sacrifice of millions of aspirants who did not survive. The gene seed organs that will be implanted, the training regimens that will be endured, the psychological conditioning that will reshape the mind, all of these elements work together to create something that is simultaneously more and less than human. More, because a space marine possesses capabilities that no unmodified human could ever achieve. He can fight for days without sleep, survive wounds that would kill a dozen men, crush metal with his bare hands, and process tactical information with the speed and precision of a cogitator. He is stronger, faster, tougher, and deadlier than any normal warrior has any right to be. He is, by any objective measure, superior to baseline humanity in every physical metric that matters for warfare. Less, because in the process of becoming this weapon, much of what makes us human is stripped away. The capacity for normal relationships, for a life beyond war, for dreams and hopes that do not involve battle and duty. The emotional range becomes narrowed and focused, refined into a weapon like everything else. The past is deliberately obscured, replaced with implanted memories and conditioning that serves the chapter's needs rather than the individual's identity. By the time the transformation is complete, the boy who entered the chapter's fortress monastery might as well be dead, replaced by something that wears his face but thinks and feels in ways that normal humans struggle to comprehend. This is the bargain that is made, often without the child truly understanding what he is agreeing to. This is the price that must be paid for the Imperium's survival, and it is a price that has been paid millions of times over the 10 millennia since the Emperor first walked among men. But the Space Marines, formidable as they are, represent only one type of weapon in the Imperium's vast arsenal. There are the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own bodyguard, each of whom is worth a dozen Space Marines in combat, and whose creation involves even more intensive and individualized modification. There are the Grey Knights, demon hunters without peer, whose very existence is kept secret from most of the Imperium, and whose creation involves methods that make even standard Space Marine transformation seem merciful. There are the Titan Princeps, whose minds are melded with god engines that level cities with each step. There are the countless other modified warriors and weapons that the Imperium deploys in its eternal struggle for survival. Each of these represents a different answer to the question of what it takes to become the Imperium's ultimate weapon. Each involves sacrifices and transformations that challenge our understanding of human identity and dignity. Each is necessary, terrible, and in its own way, magnificent. To understand what it truly takes requires us to look closely at the process, to follow one path among many, as a human child is systematically torn apart and rebuilt into something greater. We must examine not just the physical changes, but the psychological and spiritual transformations that accompany them. We must acknowledge both the power that is gained and the humanity that is lost. We must see the process not through the sanitized lens of propaganda, but in all its brutal and necessary horror. Because in the end, this is what the grim darkness of the far future demands. Not heroes in the traditional sense, but weapons. Not individuals who fight for personal glory, but tools that serve a higher purpose, without question or hesitation. The Imperium needs warriors who can face the worst horrors the galaxy can conjure and not break, who can endure any suffering and continue fighting, who can kill without remorse when killing is required, and show mercy when mercy serves the Emperor's will. Creating such warriors requires more than training. It requires transformation at the deepest levels of body and mind. It requires taking a child and methodically removing everything that would make him weak, replacing it with modifications and conditioning designed purely for war. It is not a process that respects individuality or personal choice. It is not gentle or kind. It is necessary, and that necessity has shaped the Imperium as much as any decision the Emperor himself ever made. The need for superhumans. To understand why the Imperium needs weapons like the Space Marines, we must first understand the scale of the threats arrayed against humanity. This is not a universe where human courage and determination alone can secure victory. This is a cosmos soaked in blood and malice, where gods literally exist and actively work toward humanity's destruction, where entire species have evolved specifically to prey upon mankind, where the fundamental laws of reality itself can be twisted and broken by malevolent forces. When the Emperor first unified Terra during the Age of Strife, he looked out at a galaxy that had been dark and silent for thousands of years. Warp storms had isolated human worlds, and in that isolation, horror had taken root. Some worlds had descended into barbarism, their technology lost, their people reduced to fighting with spears and swords over ruins they no longer understood. Other worlds had maintained their civilization, but at terrible cost, becoming tyrannies or theocracies or worse. And on some worlds, things that should not exist had taken root, growing in the darkness, waiting. The Emperor knew that humanity's survival depended on reunification. The scattered children of Terra had to be brought back together, protected and guided, before the threats that lurked in the void devoured them one by one. But achieving this would require military force on an unprecedented scale. Not just armies, though those would be needed in countless numbers. Not just fleets, though void warfare would be constant and brutal. What was needed were warriors who could serve as the tip of the spear, who could conquer planets in the Emperor's name and inspire compliance through their very presence. The Thunder Warriors, the Emperor's first attempt at superhuman soldiers, had proven the concept. These enhanced warriors had conquered Terra, crushing opposition with terrifying efficiency. But they were flawed, unstable, their bodies and minds deteriorating rapidly. They were weapons designed for a specific task, and when that task was complete, they had to be discarded. The Emperor needed something better, something that could not just conquer, but hold, not just destroy, but rule, not just inspire fear, but command loyalty across centuries and millennia. This is why he created the Primarchs, and from their genetic templates, the Space Marines. Each Primarch was a masterpiece of genetic engineering, a being that combined superhuman physical capabilities with strategic genius and charismatic leadership. They were designed to be generals and governors, warriors and statesmen, capable of leading the Great Crusade across the stars. And from each Primarch's genetic material, thousands upon thousands of Space Marines could be created, lesser copies of their gene fathers, but still vastly superior to any baseline human warrior. The threats they faced during the Great Crusade were immense. Orc empires that spanned dozens of worlds, their hordes numbering in the billions. Eldari corsairs who struck from the webway with advanced technology and millennia of combat experience. Human empires that had turned from the light of reason into something dark and twisted. Entities that defied classification. Beings of pure thought or strange xenos that existed in ways human minds struggled to comprehend. And always, lurking beneath it all, the whispers of chaos, offering power to those desperate or foolish enough to listen. Against such enemies, normal humans could achieve local victories, but they could not win the war. A regiment of Imperial army soldiers might hold a fortress against Orc attackers, but they could not lead a counterattack into the heart of Orc territory and decapitate the leadership. A fleet of human warships might win a void battle against Eldari corsairs, but they could not board the enemy vessels and butcher the Xenos in close quarters combat. What was needed were warriors who combined the tactical flexibility of human intelligence with physical capabilities that exceeded anything a natural evolutionary process could produce. The Space Marines fulfilled this need with devastating efficiency. A single squad of 10 Astartes could turn the tide of a planetary war. A company of 100 could conquer a star system. A chapter of 1,000 was a force that could change the fate of entire sectors. They were not merely better soldiers, they were force multipliers, each one worth dozens or hundreds of normal troops, each one capable of completing missions that would be suicidal for anyone else. But the Great Crusade ended in the fires of the Horus Heresy, and the Imperium that emerged from that cataclysm was fundamentally different from the one the Emperor had envisioned. 9 of the 20 legions had turned traitor, taking with them millions of Space Marines and countless mortal troops. The Emperor himself had been interred upon the Golden Throne, his body broken, his attention focused on maintaining the Astronomicon that made interstellar travel possible. The dream of a united, rational, secular human empire died in the ruins of Terra's palace. What remained was an Imperium perpetually under siege. The 10,000 years since the heresy have seen humanity beset on all sides by enemies that grow stronger with each passing century. The Eye of Terror became a permanent wound in reality, spewing forth the traitor legions and their demonic allies, in endless black crusades. The Tyranids arrived from beyond the galactic rim, monstrous xenos that consumed entire worlds and absorbed all biological matter into their hive fleets. The Necrons began awakening from their 60-million-year slumber, bringing with them technology that made even the Eldari look primitive. The Toe expanded their nascent empire, offering a vision of cooperation that many human worlds found dangerously appealing. And through it all, the Imperium has endured primarily because of its superhuman warriors. The Adeptus Astartes, divided into roughly 1,000 chapters following the reforms after the heresy, serve as humanity's ultimate defenders. They are the ones who respond when a world cannot be saved by mere mortals. They are the ones who hunt down heresy and Xenos corruption before it can spread. They are the ones who venture into the most dangerous regions of space to conduct missions that must succeed no matter the cost. But they are not enough. They have never been enough. With only approximately 1 million Space Marines to protect 1 million worlds and the void between them, the Adeptus Astartes are spread impossibly thin. Most Imperial citizens will live their entire lives without ever seeing a Space Marine. Most worlds under attack will receive no aid from the chapters, simply because there are not enough Astartes to be everywhere they are needed. The Space Marines are the Imperium's ultimate weapon, but they are a weapon that must be used sparingly, deployed only where their unique capabilities make the crucial difference. This scarcity drives the brutal nature of Space Marine recruitment and creation. Every Astartes lost in battle represents not just a warrior's death, but the loss of years of training, hundreds of hours of surgery, and genetic material that cannot easily be replaced. The gene seed that makes the transformation possible is harvested from fallen Marines and implanted in new recruits, creating a cycle where the dead literally give life to the next generation. But this cycle is fragile. Gene seed can become corrupted or lost. Some chapters, particularly those with unstable gene seed like the Blood Angels and Space Wolves, face constant struggles to maintain their numbers. The need for superhuman warriors has only grown more desperate with the opening of the Great Rift, the massive warp storm that now splits the galaxy in two. The Imperium Nihilus, the dark half cut off from Terra's light, faces horrors without the guidance of the Astronomicon. Communication across the rift is nearly impossible. Reinforcements rarely arrive. In this new age of darkness, the Space Marines must be even more than they were before. They must be not just warriors, but symbols of hope for populations that see only darkness ahead. This is the context in which Space Marines are created. They are not made because the Imperium values individual advancement or seeks to create superhumans for their own sake. They are made because humanity's survival demands it, because without them, the Imperium would have fallen centuries ago. Every brutal aspect of their creation, every sacrifice demanded, every trauma endured, all of it is justified by the simple fact that the alternative is extinction. When a child is selected to become a Space Marine, he is not chosen because the chapter wishes to honor him or because he has earned a reward. He is chosen because he has the genetic and psychological profile that suggests he might, possibly, survive the transformation. He is chosen because the chapter needs replacements for brothers lost in battle, because the gene seed must find new hosts or be wasted. He is chosen because he is potentially useful as a weapon, and in the grim darkness of the far future, usefulness is the only virtue that matters. Selection. Choosing the worthy. The selection of aspirants who might one day become Space Marines is a process that begins long before a child ever sets foot inside a chapter's fortress monastery. For most chapters, it starts with the careful cultivation of recruiting worlds, planets, whose populations have been shaped over generations to produce the kind of warriors the chapter needs. A recruiting world is not chosen randomly. Each chapter maintains control over one or more planets whose environments and cultures have been specifically designed to produce candidates with the physical and mental characteristics necessary for transformation. Some recruiting worlds are death worlds, planets where life itself is a constant struggle against predators, harsh environments, and brutal competition for resources. Others are feral worlds, where technological advancement has stalled at a medieval or even primitive level, but where warrior cultures thrive. Still others are civilized worlds that maintain traditions of martial excellence, academies and training programs that identify promising warriors from an early age. Consider Fenris, the ice world that serves as the Space Wolves' recruiting ground. It is a planet of extremes, where volcanic upheaval and tectonic instability create islands that rise and fall over generations. The human tribes that inhabit these islands live hard, brutal lives, constantly at war with the environment, with massive predators like the Fenrisian wolf and kraken, and with each other. By the time a Fenrisian youth reaches selection age, he is already a warrior who has killed both beast and man. He has endured cold that would kill most humans, faced death more times than he can count, and proven his worth to his tribe through combat. Or consider Baal and its moons, the recruiting grounds of the Blood Angels. These are radiation-scorched wastelands where most of the population lives in scattered tribes, fighting over scarce resources and sheltering in the ruins of the civilization that once thrived there. The youth of Baal grow up knowing that survival means killing or being killed, that mercy is a luxury no one can afford, that every day might be their last. When the Blood Angels' ships descend from the sky, offering a chance to ascend to something greater, it is not an opportunity so much as an escape from certain death. The cultures that develop on recruiting worlds serve a specific purpose. They pre-select for traits that the chapter values, creating a population where only the strongest, most aggressive, and most adaptable individuals survive to reach the age where they might be chosen. A child from a civilized imperial world, raised in comfort and safety, would have almost no chance of surviving the transformation process. His body would be too soft, his mind too unaccustomed to pain and trauma. But a child from a recruiting world has already been hardened by years of struggle. He is already a weapon, albeit a crude one that requires refining. The actual selection process varies from chapter to chapter, but certain elements remain constant. First, there are physical trials that test strength, endurance, speed, and pain tolerance. Aspirants might be forced to climb mountains, swim through frozen waters, run for days without food or water, or fight hand-to-hand with minimal protection. These trials are not merely difficult, they are designed to kill. Mortality rates among aspirants during the initial trials commonly exceed 90%. For every child who reaches the fortress monastery, dozens or hundreds have died trying. Consider the trial of the Space Wolves, which demands that aspirants survive alone in the Fenrisian wilderness during the winter, finding their way to the chapter's fortress, known as the Fang. The journey involves crossing hundreds of miles of territory inhabited by creatures that would terrify even a trained soldier, doing so with minimal equipment, in weather that can freeze unprotected flesh in minutes. Most aspirants never complete the journey. They are killed by predators, succumb to exposure, or simply give up when the suffering becomes too great. Those who do reach the Fang have proven not just physical capability, but something more important: the will to endure absolutely anything rather than accept failure. Or the trials of the Dark Angels, who maintain a tradition inherited from the knightly orders of their homeworld Caliban. Aspirants must prove themselves in ritualized combat, demonstrating not just fighting ability, but tactical thinking, honor in victory, and grace in defeat. They must master weapons ranging from swords to bolters, must show that they can think as well as fight, must demonstrate loyalty to their squad mates, even when personal glory beckons. The Dark Angels do not merely seek killers. They seek warriors who can be trusted with secrets that would break weaker minds. Psychological testing is equally important, though often more subtle. Chapter serfs and chaplains observe aspirants constantly, looking for signs of character that cannot be faked. Is the child resilient in the face of failure? Does he help his fellow aspirants, or see them purely as competition? Can he follow orders even when they seem illogical or suicidal? Does he show the kind of loyalty that will be required once he joins the chapter? Most importantly, does he possess the mental flexibility to have his entire identity stripped away and replaced with something new? This last point is crucial. The transformation into a space marine is not just physical. It requires psychological reshaping so profound that the original personality might be entirely subsumed. Some children, no matter how physically capable, lack the mental plasticity to undergo this change. They resist the conditioning, cling too tightly to their old identities, cannot accept the death of who they were. Such aspirants do not survive the process. Their minds break under the strain, leaving bodies that are technically alive, but personalities that have shattered like glass under a hammer's blow.
I'll be honest with you. Researching this topic for the past few days has been genuinely unsettling. I've been into Warhammer for years, and I love Space Marines as much as anyone, but sitting down and really mapping out what happens to these children, it hits different. These kids are 10, 11 years old when this starts. That's younger than most of us were when we first discovered this hobby. They don't get to play with toy soldiers, they become the soldiers. And yeah, the galaxy needs them, the Imperium would fall without them, but that doesn't make it any less horrifying when you actually think about it. Anyways, that's my opinion. Let's get back to the story.
Age is another critical factor. Most chapters recruit children between the ages of 10 and 14, before the body has fully matured, but after it has developed enough strength and coordination to endure the early stages of transformation. This narrow window means that selection must happen at precisely the right time. Too young, and the child's body cannot handle the stress of the implantation process. Too old, and the organs will not take root properly, leading to rejection and death. For some chapters, selection happens through formal trials held on a regular schedule. The Imperial Fists, for example, recruit from the crews of prison ships, offering criminals a chance at redemption through service. These criminals, many of whom have already proven themselves in the brutal hierarchy of their vessels, undergo trials that test their ability to follow orders, work as a team, and endure suffering without breaking. The chapter does not care about their past crimes. It cares only about whether they can be forged into weapons worthy of the Emperor's service. For other chapters, selection is more organic. The salamanders recruit from the volcanic forge world of Nocturne, where the population maintains traditions of craftsmanship and brotherhood that align with the chapter's values. Aspirants prove themselves not just through combat, but through their ability to forge weapons and armor, demonstrating the patience and attention to detail that the salamanders prize. When volcanic activity threatens the population, the salamanders watch to see which young warriors risk their lives to save others, identifying those who possess the selfless courage the chapter requires. The Space Wolves have one of the most distinctive selection processes, tied to their chapter's unique culture and the unstable nature of their gene seed. The Canis helix, the genetic modification unique to their line, causes effects that can vary wildly between individuals. Some become perfect examples of the chapter's warrior ideal. Others undergo changes that are more dramatic and disturbing, their bodies warping into forms that are more lupine than human. During selection, the Space Wolves look for individuals whose genetic compatibility with the Canis helix will produce warriors rather than monsters, though even they cannot predict with perfect accuracy who will transform successfully. There is also the matter of genetic compatibility with the gene seed itself. Each chapter's gene seed carries the genetic legacy of its primarch, and not every human can successfully integrate these genetic modifications. Aspirants undergo extensive genetic testing, their DNA analyzed for markers that suggest compatibility. Those whose genetics do not match are rejected, no matter how impressive their physical or mental capabilities. This is not cruelty for its own sake. Implanting incompatible gene seed results in agonizing death as the body tears itself apart. organs growing out of control, immune systems attacking the implants as foreign invaders. Better to reject an aspirant at this stage than to subject him to that fate. The final element of selection is often the most arbitrary: timing. Chapters only recruit when they need to replace losses or expand their numbers up to their allowed strength of 1,000 battle brothers. A child who might have been an excellent candidate, but who reaches selection age during a period when the chapter has no need of new recruits, will never be chosen. His potential will go unrealized, his life following whatever path awaits those who are not selected. For some recruiting world cultures, this means a return to normal life. For others, it means serving the chapter in other ways, as serfs, servitors, or members of the mortal defense forces that protect the chapter's holdings. But for those who are selected, who pass all the trials and tests and genetic screenings, who prove themselves worthy of transformation, what awaits is not celebration or honor. What awaits is pain beyond description, trauma that will reshape body and mind, and a systematic destruction of everything they once were in service of creating something new. They do not yet understand this, cannot comprehend the magnitude of what they have agreed to. Most are simply relieved to have survived, grateful for the chance to become something more than human. They do not yet know the price they will pay. They cannot imagine the suffering that lies ahead, or the extent to which they will be changed. They see the Space Marines as heroes, as angels of the Emperor, and they want nothing more than to join their ranks. It will be years before they understand that what they think of as ascension is actually a kind of death, a deliberate murder of the person they were to make room for the weapon they will become. The selection is complete. The aspirants have been chosen. Now the real transformation begins. The first implants. Beginning transformation. The aspirant's first view of the interior of a fortress monastery is often overwhelming. These are not mere buildings, but fortresses that can withstand orbital bombardment. Cities unto themselves housing thousands of chapter serfs, armories containing weapons that could conquer worlds, and laboratories where the secrets of the Adeptus Astartes are preserved and refined. The walls are adorned with battle honors spanning millennia, with the names of heroes carved in stone, with relics taken from enemies that most imperial citizens do not even know exist. But the aspirant has little time to marvel at his surroundings. He is immediately taken to the apothecarian, the chapter's medical facility, where the apothecaries who will oversee his transformation await. These are not healers in any normal sense. They are genetic engineers, surgeons, and craftsmen, whose work involves reshaping human flesh according to patterns established 10,000 years ago. They have performed these procedures countless times on countless aspirants, and they know with clinical precision which modifications will succeed and which will kill the patient on the operating table. The transformation begins with the first organ implantation, the secondary heart. This procedure is performed when the aspirant is between 10 and 14 years old, at a stage when the body is still growing, but has developed enough strength to survive the trauma. The surgical process is extensive and brutal. The chest cavity must be opened, the ribcage carefully spread to provide access, and the new heart positioned in a location where it can function alongside the original, without interfering with existing blood flow patterns. The secondary heart is not merely a backup for the original organ, it is an enhanced version, capable of maintaining full circulatory function even if the primary heart is damaged or destroyed. It beats in rhythm with the original heart most of the time, but can take over completely if necessary, ensuring that a Space Marine can continue fighting, even with wounds that would instantly kill a normal human. The organ also produces enhanced blood cells that improve oxygen carrying capacity and provide resistance to various toxins and diseases. The pain of this first surgery is beyond anything the aspirant has experienced, despite having lived a life of hardship and violence on a recruiting world. Modern anesthetics are available to the apothecarian, but they are often deliberately withheld or used only partially. Pain is considered part of the selection process. An aspirant who cannot endure the agony of implantation will never survive the rigors of battle. His screams echo through the medical chambers, joining the chorus of countless others who have undergone this transformation over the millennia. Recovery from the first implantation takes weeks. During this time, the aspirant's body must adapt to the presence of the secondary heart, learning to regulate blood flow with 2 pumping organs instead of 1. The process causes chest pains, irregular heartbeats, and episodes where blood pressure spikes or drops dangerously. Many aspirants do not survive this phase. Their bodies reject the implant, or complications arise that prove fatal. Those who do survive find that they heal faster than before, that their endurance has already begun to increase beyond human norms. While the aspirant recovers from the first surgery, the apothecaries prepare for the next phase, the implantation of the os modular and biscopea, organs that will fundamentally change the body's physical structure. These are typically implanted within months of the secondary heart, while the body is still adapting to its first enhancement. The os modular is implanted in the chest cavity near the kidneys. This thumb-sized organ secretes hormones that cause the skeleton to grow both larger and denser. The bones thicken, becoming substantially stronger than normal human bone. The growth process is not gradual or comfortable. It happens rapidly, often painfully, as the skeleton expands and reshapes itself. The aspirant suffers from bone pain that can be incapacitating, aches that radiate through every part of his body, as his frame literally grows to accommodate what he will become. Over the course of approximately a year, an aspirant's height can increase by a foot or more. His shoulders broaden, his chest deepens, his entire skeletal structure becomes that of something designed for war rather than normal life. The pain during this growth is constant and severe. It is not uncommon for aspirants to be unable to train during periods of rapid growth, confined to their cells while their bodies transform, fed nutrients and supplements to support the accelerated development. The biscopea is implanted in the chest as well, positioned where it can most effectively influence muscle growth throughout the body. This organ triggers enhanced muscle development, causing muscles to grow larger, denser, and more efficient. But this is not the bloated, steroid-induced muscle growth that sacrifices flexibility for size. The biscopea creates lean, powerful muscles that maintain full range of motion while providing strength far beyond human norms. An adult space marine can crush metal with his bare hands, lift objects weighing several hundred pounds, and strike with enough force to shatter concrete. This begins with the biscopea's influence during the transformation process. The muscle growth, like the skeletal growth, is painful. It happens too rapidly for the body's comfort, muscles developing faster than the nervous system can adapt. Aspirants experience constant soreness, cramps that can leave them gasping on the floor, and a hunger that can never quite be satisfied as their bodies demand nutrients to fuel the rapid development. They eat prodigious amounts of food, far more than seems possible for their size, yet they are always hungry, always needing more fuel for the transformation burning through them. During these early months, the aspirants also begin their formal training as space marines. They cannot yet match even a scout marine in combat capabilities, but they are already stronger and tougher than baseline humans. They train in weapons handling, learning to use the bolter, the signature weapon of the Adeptus Astartes. The bolter is a massively powerful firearm, firing Ponton 75 caliber explosive rounds capable of blowing apart human-sized targets. In the hands of a normal human, the recoil would shatter bones. The aspirants, with their enhanced strength just beginning to develop, find it merely punishing. They train in hand-to-hand combat, learning the brutal efficiency that characterizes Astartes' close-quarters fighting. There is no sport or artistry here, only techniques designed to kill quickly and move on to the next target. They learn to use their enhanced strength, to leverage their increased size, to strike at weak points with precision and force. They spar with each other and with training servitors, mechanical opponents that can be programmed to match various enemy types and fighting styles. They also begin the first stages of indoctrination, the psychological conditioning that will shape them into loyal warriors of their chapter. This starts subtly, with lessons in chapter history and heroes, with stories of great battles and noble sacrifices. The aspirants learn their chapter's battle cry, its heraldry, its core beliefs and practices. They begin to think of themselves not as individuals, but as part of something larger, a brotherhood that stretches back 10,000 years and will continue long after they are dead. The chaplains play a central role in this early indoctrination. These spiritual leaders of the chapter serve not just as priests, but as teachers and watchers, identifying aspirants whose loyalty seems questionable or whose minds seem resistant to conditioning. A chaplain's questioning can reduce an aspirant to tears, breaking through his defenses to expose any lingering doubts or weakness. Those who cannot satisfy the chaplain's concerns may be removed from the transformation process, their potential deemed insufficient to justify the resources required to complete their conversion. Sleep becomes a strange experience during these early months. The aspirants' dreams are troubled, filled with fragmented images of their past lives mixed with the indoctrination they are receiving. Some wake screaming from nightmares where their bodies tear themselves apart from the inside. Others report dreams where they see through different eyes, experiencing memories that are not their own. The apothecaries explain these as side effects of the transformation, neural pathways being rewritten as the body and brain adapt to their new configuration. The mortality rate during these first implantations remains high. Even after surviving the initial selection trials, many aspirants do not live through the implantation process. Their bodies reject the organs, or complications arise during surgery, or the rapid growth proves too much for their systems to handle. Some simply die in their sleep, their hearts stopping as the physiological stress becomes too great. Others must be euthanized when it becomes clear that the transformation has gone wrong, their bodies developing in ways that are incompatible with life, or their minds breaking under the psychological strain. For those who survive, the changes are already profound. Within 6 months to a year of beginning the transformation, an aspirant no longer looks entirely human. He is taller, broader, more muscular than any natural development could produce. His heart beats with an unusual rhythm, the two organs creating a syncopated pattern. His bones are visible through his skin in places, showing the enhanced structure beneath. He moves with a slightly awkward gait, still adjusting to a body that has grown faster than his motor control has adapted. But this is only the beginning. The secondary heart, os modular, and biscopea are just the first 3 of 19 organs that must be implanted. Each subsequent implantation will bring new changes, new capabilities, and new suffering. The aspirant has survived the first stage, but he has miles yet to go, and the road ahead grows only more difficult. In the quiet moments between training sessions and surgeries, some aspirants wonder if they made the right choice. They remember their lives before selection, the families and friends they left behind, the simplicity of a life where the future held possibilities beyond war and death. But these thoughts are discouraged, identified as weakness by the chaplains, and punished through additional training or penance. And Astartes does not dwell on what was. He focuses only on what he will become, on the service he will render, on the duty that awaits. The boy who entered the fortress monastery is beginning to fade, displaced by something new. It is not yet a space marine, not even close, but it is no longer entirely human either. It is something in between, caught in a transformation that cannot be stopped or reversed. There is no going back now. There is only forward, through pain and trauma and endless conditioning, toward the final form that awaits at the end of this dark road. The middle organs, deepening the change. As the aspirant moves into the second year of transformation, the pace of implantation accelerates. His body has proven capable of accepting the initial organs, and the apothecaries move forward with the next phase. The implantation of organs that will grant capabilities far beyond human norms and begin to truly separate the aspirant from his original species. The haemastomen, typically implanted between the ages of 12 and 14, is a circular organ that replaces the body's thyroid gland. This organ fundamentally alters the aspirant's blood composition, increasing the efficiency of oxygen transfer and the production of red and white blood cells. More importantly, it works in concert with the secondary heart to create a circulatory system that can function under conditions that would kill a normal human. An Astartes, with a functioning haemastamen, can survive blood loss that would represent certain death for anyone else. His enhanced blood production replacing lost volume at an accelerated rate. The implantation procedure is relatively straightforward compared to some of the other organs, but the adaptation period is intense. For weeks after the procedure, the aspirant experiences symptoms similar to severe anemia, alternating with sensations of too much blood, pressure building behind his eyes and in his extremities. His temperature fluctuates wildly as the new organ finds its equilibrium. Some aspirants develop temporary rashes or hives as their immune systems react to the altered blood chemistry. These symptoms gradually fade as the body adapts, but the discomfort is significant and constant. Next comes the Larraman's organ, a small liver-shaped organ implanted into the chest cavity. This creates a truly extraordinary capability, near-instant blood clotting. The organ produces Larraman cells, which function like supercharged platelets that circulate through the bloodstream waiting for wounds. When tissue damage occurs, these cells immediately begin forming scar tissue, sealing wounds within seconds that would bleed for minutes or hours in a normal human. Severe injuries that would require extensive medical intervention in baseline humans can be survived by an Astartes simply by waiting for the Larraman cells to do their work. The presence of the Larraman's organ means that aspirants can train more intensely and dangerously. They engage in combat exercises with live weapons, knowing that wounds that would be crippling or fatal to normals are merely inconveniences to them. This creates a mindset shift that is crucial to becoming an Astartes. The understanding that the body is a weapon to be used and sacrificed if necessary, not a fragile vessel to be protected. Aspirants learn to ignore pain, to fight through injuries, to keep moving forward no matter what damage they sustain. The catalepsian node, implanted in the back of the skull where it interfaces with the hindbrain, grants one of the most distinctive and useful Astartes capabilities: the ability to function without normal sleep. This organ allows portions of the brain to rest while others remain active, meaning an Astartes can go for weeks or months without true sleep, resting individual sections of his brain in sequence while remaining conscious and alert. This capability is essential for the kinds of extended campaigns Space Marines conduct, where battles can last for days or weeks without pause. The surgery to implant the catalepsian node is delicate and dangerous. It requires drilling through the skull and placing the organ in precise contact with specific neural structures. The risk of death or permanent brain damage is significant. Even when successful, the adaptation period involves severe headaches, confusion, and episodes where the aspirant loses time, his consciousness fragmenting as the node interferes with normal brain function. Sleep becomes fractured and strange, broken into microseconds that feel both infinite and instantaneous. Learning to use the catalepsian node is a skill that must be practiced. Aspirants must train themselves to identify when specific portions of their brains need rest, and to activate the node consciously to allow that rest while maintaining overall alertness. Early attempts often fail, resulting in aspirants collapsing unexpectedly or finding themselves unable to think clearly despite being apparently awake. With practice, the process becomes automatic, but it takes months or years to master fully. The preomnor, or pre-stomach, is implanted in the torso between the original stomach and the throat. This organ acts as a preliminary digestive chamber capable of neutralizing most known toxins and poisons. It contains incredibly powerful acids and specialized cells that can break down substances that would kill a normal human. An Astartes can eat virtually anything, digest materials that are technically not food, and survive ingestion of poisons that would kill hundreds of baseline humans. This organ also allows space marines to survive in environments where no safe food or water exists, consuming whatever is available without fear of poisoning. The implantation of the preomnor involves extensive reconstruction of the digestive tract. The recovery period includes weeks of restricted diet, while the new organ integrates with existing systems. Aspirants experience constant indigestion, reflux that can bring up caustic digestive fluids, and a confusing hunger that cannot be satisfied because the stomach is not functioning normally. They learn through trial and error what foods their new digestive system handles best, often finding that substances they once enjoyed now cause problems while things they would never have considered eating become palatable. The ommophagia, perhaps the strangest and most disturbing of the early organs, is implanted in the spinal cord between the chest and neck. This organ allows an Astartes to gain genetic memories from consumed tissue, particularly brain tissue. By eating a portion of a fallen enemy, a space marine can access fragments of that creature's memories, learning languages, accessing tactical information, or understanding enemy capabilities at a cellular level. This practice, while disturbing to outsiders, is a sacred ritual for many chapters, a way of honoring fallen enemies and extracting every possible advantage from their deaths. The ommophagia creates urges that aspirants struggle to understand. They find themselves craving fresh meat, raw flesh, in ways that seem primal and disturbing. Some chapters embrace this, conducting rituals where aspirants consume the flesh of honored training opponents or enemies. Other chapters view it as a necessary capability, but one to be controlled and regulated. Regardless of the chapter's stance, the ommophagia changes the aspirant's relationship with food and with death in ways that further separate him from normal humanity. The multi-lung is implanted in the chest cavity, providing a third lung that can function in hostile atmospheres. This organ can extract oxygen from environments with minimal breathable air, filter out toxins and particulates, and even allow limited functioning in complete vacuum for short periods. Combined with other Astartes augmentations, the multi-lung means that space marines can fight in environments that would be instantly lethal to baseline humans without needing cumbersome breathing equipment. The implantation requires extensive restructuring of the chest cavity to accommodate the additional organ. Aspirants experience breathing difficulties for months afterward, as their bodies learn to coordinate 3 lungs instead of 2. Hyperventilation is common, as is a sensation of never getting quite enough air even when oxygen levels are adequate. With time and training, the breathing becomes natural, but the adaptation period is uncomfortable and occasionally frightening. During this middle phase of implantation, the aspirants undergo increasingly intense physical training. They are no longer merely human, but they are not yet fully Astartes either. They exist in a strange liminal state, possessing capabilities far beyond normal, but lacking the polish and completion that comes with the final implants. Their training reflects this in-between status. They engage in combat simulations that would kill baseline humans, fighting in toxic atmospheres, underwater, in zero gravity, against opponents designed to test the limits of their enhanced capabilities. They learn to fight while wounded, to ignore pain that would incapacitate normals, to keep functioning when every system in their bodies is screaming for rest. The training sergeants, often full Astartes with decades or centuries of experience, are merciless. Failure is punished with more training, with denial of food or rest, with public shaming before peers. The aspirants also continue their indoctrination, which has moved beyond simple chapter history into deeper conditioning. They undergo hypnotherapy, spending hours in trance states while recorded teachings are played directly into their subconscious minds. Battle doctrines, tactical information, enemy identification, all of this is imprinted at levels below conscious awareness. When they wake, they possess knowledge they do not remember learning, can recite litanies and battle cries they do not recall being taught. The psychological effects of these middle implants are profound. The aspirants no longer think of themselves as children, or even as humans in the traditional sense. They have begun to identify completely with their chapter, to think in terms of squad tactics and battlefield objectives rather than personal concerns. The memories of their lives before selection grow hazy and distant, displaced by the constant indoctrination and the overwhelming present of their transformation. Some aspirants experience identity crises during this phase, moments of clarity where they realize how much they have changed and question whether anything of their original self remains. These crises are identified and addressed by the chaplains, who remind the aspirants that their old lives were meaningless, that true existence begins only when they become Space Marines, that any attachment to the past is weakness to be purged. Most aspirants accept this teaching, but some cannot, and those who resist too strongly are quietly removed from the program. The attrition rate remains significant. Even this far into the transformation, aspirants continue to die from complications, from organ rejection, from training accidents that prove fatal. But those who survive are becoming something remarkable. They are taller, stronger, tougher, and more capable than any baseline human. They possess abilities that seem miraculous to outsiders, but are simply part of who they are becoming. They are no longer boys playing at being warriors. They are weapons in development, tools being forged for a specific purpose. And they still have further to go. More organs await implantation, more capabilities to be gained, more of their humanity to be stripped away and replaced with cold, efficient post-humanity. The transformation continues, relentless and unforgiving, carrying them forward toward an endpoint they can glimpse but not yet fully comprehend. The final organs, completing the Astartes. As the aspirant approaches the completion of his transformation, usually around age 16 to 18, the final organs are implanted. These provide capabilities that separate Space Marines not just from baseline humans, but from any other warrior caste in the Imperium. They are the finishing touches that create the Angels of Death. The oculobe is implanted directly into the skull, replacing and enhancing the optical nerves. This organ fundamentally alters how the aspirant sees the world. His vision becomes sharper, capable of distinguishing details at distances that would defeat normal eyesight. He can see clearly in low-light conditions that would leave baseline humans functionally blind. The oculobe also provides protection against sudden bright flashes, the pupils adjusting instantaneously to prevent blindness from weapons like photon flash grenades or the glare of plasma weapons. The surgery to implant the oculobe is one of the most delicate in the entire process. It requires the apothecaries to work directly with the eyes and the optical nerves connecting them to the brain. The risk of blindness is significant, and some aspirants do lose their sight temporarily or permanently during this procedure. For those in whom the implantation succeeds, the adjustment period is disorienting. The enhanced vision means seeing details they never noticed before, perceiving their environment with a clarity that can be overwhelming. Colors seem more vivid, movement is more apparent, the world becomes sharper and more defined in ways that take time to process and understand. The liman's ear modifies the hearing organs and provides balance and coordination enhancements. This organ not only improves hearing, but also filters out specific sounds that might be disorienting or damaging. An Astartes with a functioning liman's ear can hear whispered conversations across a room, but is immune to deafening noises that would permanently damage normal hearing. The organ also makes Space Marines immune to vertigo and motion sickness, essential for the extreme maneuvers they experience during orbital drops and high-speed combat. Implantation of the liman's ear involves extensive surgery on the inner ear and the implantation of additional organs in the cranial cavity. The recovery period includes vertigo so severe that aspirants cannot stand, nausea that makes eating impossible, and auditory distortions that make communication difficult. Sound becomes fractured and strange, arriving from directions that seem impossible, with volumes that fluctuate unpredictably. It can take weeks or months for the aspirant to regain his balance and learn to process sound through his enhanced hearing. The Susan membrane is implanted in the brain, typically in areas associated with conscious control of body functions. This organ allows an Astartes to enter a state of suspended animation when critically wounded, reducing his metabolic functions to almost nothing and buying time for rescue and medical treatment. An Astartes in Susan hibernation can survive for decades or even centuries in this state, his body preserved despite wounds that should have been fatal. This organ has saved countless Astartes who might otherwise have died on distant battlefields. The melanochrome is implanted in the lymphatic system and controls skin pigmentation. It responds to radiation exposure by darkening the skin, providing protection against stellar radiation and atomic fallout. This organ is why many Space Marines have unusually dark or pallid skin, their melanin levels adjusted based on the environments they most commonly fight in. Some chapters, like the salamanders, have melanochromes that produce dramatic effects, turning their skin coal black and their eyes red due to the intense radiation of their homeworld. The oolitic kidney is implanted near the existing kidneys. This organ serves as a superfilter, capable of extracting water from virtually any liquid and purifying the blood of toxins that have bypassed the preomnor. An Astartes can drink seawater, industrial waste, or even blood without ill effects, his oolitic kidney extracting necessary fluids and nutrients while filtering out harmful substances. This organ also allows Space Marines to recycle their own body fluids in extreme situations, surviving in environments where no water source exists. The neuroglottis is implanted in the mouth and throat, providing an enhanced sense of taste that borders on chemical analysis. An Astartes can taste the air, identifying poisons, tracking prey by sampling the environment, and detecting subtle chemical signatures that indicate danger. This organ works in concert with the omophagia to provide detailed information about consumed materials. Some Space Marines can identify specific enemy types by taste alone, distinguishing between different Chaos Cultist groups or Xenos subspecies through chemical analysis of trace residues. The mucranoid is implanted under the skin throughout the body. This organ responds to extreme temperature exposure by secreting a waxy substance that insulates the body and allows the Astartes to survive in environments that would kill unprotected humans. In extreme cold, the mucranoid produces an oily film that prevents heat loss. In extreme heat or vacuum exposure, it produces a hardening substance that temporarily seals the skin and allows survival for short periods. This organ is why Space Marines can fight briefly in hard vacuum without suits, though they cannot survive indefinitely without proper equipment. The Becher's gland is one of the stranger organs, implanted in the salivary glands. It produces a corrosive venom that the Astartes can spit at enemies with remarkable accuracy and distance. This venom can blind opponents, corrode metal, and cause chemical burns to exposed flesh. While not a primary weapon, the Becher's gland provides a last resort attack option and has saved Astartes who found themselves disarmed or incapacitated in close combat. The progenoid glands are implanted in 2 locations, one in the neck and one in the chest. These organs are perhaps the most important from the chapter's perspective, as they are responsible for producing new gene seed. Over the course of a Space Marine's life, these glands mature and develop, creating the genetic material that can be harvested after his death and implanted in new aspirants. The progenoids ensure that the chapter's gene legacy continues, that each fallen Astartes literally gives life to future generations. They are harvested by apothecaries after death, or in cases of certain death, moments before it to prevent corruption or loss. But the most crucial implant, the one that truly completes the transformation from aspirant to Space Marine, is the black carapace. This is always the final organ to be implanted, usually when the aspirant is between 18 and 20 years old. and all other organs have been successfully integrated. The black carapace, also called the interface, is not an organ in the traditional sense. It is a complex network of neural receptors and connective tissue that is implanted just beneath the skin across most of the body's surface. Once implanted, the black carapace grows and develops over several months, creating hard points that protrude through the skin. These points provide direct neural connections for power armor, allowing the armor to function as an extension of the Astarte's body, rather than merely as worn equipment. The implantation of the black carapace is the longest and most invasive of all the procedures. The aspirant must be opened across almost his entire body, the synthetic skin laid beneath his natural skin, the neural connections carefully integrated with his nervous system. The surgery can take many hours and involves a level of trauma that would kill any baseline human. Even for an aspirant with 18 other gene seed organs already functioning, the black carapace implantation brings him closer to death than at any other point in the transformation process. Recovery takes months. The aspirant must lie still while the black carapace integrates, growing and spreading beneath his skin. Movement is agonizing as the new tissue presses against existing structures. The hard points that emerge through the skin are painful and prone to infection until they fully mature. The aspirant feels sensation from the black carapace, as if it were natural skin, but it responds to stimuli differently, creating confusing sensory input that must be learned and interpreted. But when the black carapace is fully integrated and the aspirant is finally fitted with power armor, the transformation justifies all the suffering. The armor does not feel like something worn. It feels like a second skin, every movement transmitted through the neural interface with perfect precision. The aspirant can feel through the armor's sensors as if they were his own nerves, can move with a precision and fluidity impossible with conventional armor. He has become one with his equipment, a fusion of flesh and machine that represents the pinnacle of the Adeptus Astartes. The first time an aspirant dons power armor is a moment that many describe as euphoric, a sense of finally being complete after years of transformation. The armor amplifies his already superhuman strength, provides protection that can withstand weapons that would devastate armored vehicles, and integrates systems that further enhance his capabilities. With the armor's auto-senses, his enhanced vision and hearing become even more acute. With the armor's strength enhancement, his already formidable physical power multiplies. He is no longer merely an enhanced human. He is a walking weapon system, an angel of death ready to bring the Emperor's judgment to his enemies. But even with all 19 organs implanted and the black carapace fully integrated, the transformation is not quite complete. The new Space Marine, officially now a Scout Marine or the equivalent in his chapter's organizational structure, must still prove himself in combat. He must learn to use his enhanced capabilities effectively, to work as part of a team with other Astartes, to adapt the years of training to the chaos and unpredictability of real battle. This final phase of development typically involves service in a scout company or similar formation, where the new Marines undertake missions under the guidance of experienced veterans. They learn the reality of war as opposed to its simulation, face enemies that do not follow the predictable patterns of training servitors, and come to understand what it truly means to be a Space Marine. Some do not survive this period, dying in their first combat deployments. Others prove themselves worthy and are inducted as full battle brothers into one of the chapter's companies. The entire process, from initial selection to completion as a full battle brother, typically takes between 5 and 10 years, depending on the chapter and the individual's compatibility with the gene seed. During those years, the aspirant has been transformed utterly and completely. His body has been rebuilt from the inside out, every system enhanced or replaced. His mind has been conditioned and indoctrinated. His original personality subsumed beneath layers of hypnotherapy and psychological manipulation. His very identity has changed from whoever he was before to a weapon in the Emperor's service. Looking at a completed Space Marine, it is easy to forget that he was once a child, a human boy with dreams and fears, and a future that might have held many possibilities. All of that has been burned away, sacrificed on the altar of necessity. What remains is something magnificent and terrible, a warrior without peer, a being who will serve the Imperium until death claims him, which might not come for centuries given the extended lifespan that the gene seed modifications provide. But the question remains, has something been gained that justifies what was lost? To answer that, we must look beyond the basic Space Marine to the even more specialized warriors that represent the absolute pinnacle of the Imperium's military might. Beyond the standard, elite warriors. The standard Space Marine is already a weapon beyond peer, but within each chapter exist warriors who have transcended even these lofty standards. These are the specialists and elites, the heroes whose deeds echo through centuries, the individuals who possess capabilities that make even their battle brothers regard them with awe. Understanding what it takes to become the Imperium's ultimate weapon requires understanding these exceptional warriors and the prices they pay beyond the standard transformation. Consider the librarians, the psychic warriors of the Space Marine chapters. A librarian begins as a standard aspirant, but possesses a rare gift: psychic potential. This gift is both blessing and curse, for it makes the individual valuable but also dangerous. Psychers can accidentally open portals to the warp, inviting demon possession or worse. They must be carefully controlled, trained, and monitored to ensure they remain assets rather than becoming threats. When an aspirant with psychic potential is identified, usually through testing conducted by the chapter's librarius, his transformation path diverges from the standard. He undergoes the same 19 organ implantations as any other Space Marine, but his training includes additional decades of psychic discipline. He must learn to control his powers without succumbing to the dangers they represent. He studies the nature of the warp, the entities that dwell there, and the techniques that allow him to wield psychic power safely. The training is unforgiving. Many librarian aspirants do not survive it, their powers overwhelming their control during training exercises. Some are possessed by warp entities despite all precautions and must be destroyed before they can harm others. Others simply burn out, their minds unable to withstand the strain of maintaining the psychic barriers necessary for safe power use. Those who do complete the training become some of the most formidable warriors in the Imperium, able to incinerate enemies with thought alone, read minds, see the future, or manipulate reality in ways that seem miraculous to those who do not understand the warp's nature. But librarians pay a price beyond the standard Space Marine transformation. Their connection to the warp means they are always at risk, always fighting to maintain control. They experience the galaxy differently than their battle brothers, seeing the currents of psychic energy that flow through all things, feeling the emotions of those around them, knowing things they have no natural way of knowing. Many librarians describe their existence as exhausting, a constant vigilance against threats both external and internal. They can never truly rest, never lower their guard, for to do so invites disaster. Then there are the chaplains, the spiritual guardians of the chapter. These warriors undergo the standard transformation, but are then selected for additional training in theology, psychology, and leadership. They must memorize the entire Codex Astartes if their chapter follows it, learn the complete history of their chapter, including secrets kept from most battle brothers, and develop the iron will necessary to maintain the faith and discipline of hundreds of warriors. Chaplains serve as confessors, judges, and executioners. They hear the doubts and fears of their battle brothers, identify weakness that might become heresy, and when necessary, execute those who have fallen from the Emperor's grace. They lead the chapter's most sacred rituals, from the indoctrination of new aspirants to the funeral rites of fallen heroes. They are the keepers of the chapter's soul, guardians against corruption, both external and internal. The psychological strain on chaplains is immense. They must maintain absolute certainty in the righteousness of the Imperium and the Emperor's divinity, even when confronted with evidence that might shake a weaker faith. They must judge their brothers, sometimes condemning warriors they have fought beside for decades. They must witness suffering constantly, hearing confessions that reveal the depth of trauma and doubt that even Space Marines experience. Many chaplains become hardened to the point of seeming inhumane, their empathy burned away by the demands of their role. Tech Marines represent another specialization that requires additional transformation beyond the standard. These warriors are not content merely to use their equipment. They must understand it at a fundamental level, maintaining and repairing the chapter's vehicles, weapons, and armor. To achieve this, they are sent to Mars for decades of additional training under the Adeptus Mechanicus. On Mars, Tech Marines undergo extensive augmentation beyond their gene seed modifications. They receive mechadendrites, mechanical appendages that extend from their bodies and allow them to interface directly with machinery. They have their brains modified with cognitive implants that improve their ability to process technical information and perform complex calculations. They learn the sacred rites of the Mechanicus, the prayers and rituals that the tech priests believe keep the machine spirits cooperative. This additional transformation creates a division between Tech Marines and their battle brothers. When they return from Mars, they are changed in ways that go beyond physical modification. They think differently, viewing the universe through a lens that values machines as much as or more than humans. They speak in binary cant, the machine language of the Mechanicus, as naturally as High Gothic. They perform rituals over equipment that other Marines find strange or even heretical. Many chapters mistrust their Tech Marines to some degree, seeing them as having divided loyalties between their chapter and the Mechanicus. Apothecaries, the medical specialists who maintain the chapter's gene seed and tend to wounded warriors, undergo training that is equally intensive, if less physically transformative. They must learn every detail of Astartes' physiology, understand how each gene seed organ functions and can malfunction, and develop the skills necessary to perform battlefield surgery under the worst possible conditions. They carry specialized equipment, including the reductor, a tool that can extract progenoid glands from fallen or dying Marines to preserve the gene seed for future aspirants. The psychological burden on apothecaries is unique. They are responsible for the chapter's genetic legacy, for ensuring that gene seed is not lost or corrupted. They must make terrible decisions about which wounded brothers can be saved and which are beyond help. They must sometimes execute mercy kills, ending the suffering of Marines whose wounds are too severe to survive. They harvest gene seed from brothers they trained alongside, friends who died in battle, reducing them to genetic material that can be implanted in strangers. The emotional distance required to perform these duties shapes apothecaries into figures that other Marines often find cold or detached. Veteran Marines who survive long enough to be inducted into a chapter's first company and trained in Terminator armor represent another level of elite status. Terminator armor, properly known as tactical dreadnought armor, is even more heavily armored and more physically demanding than standard power armor. It can withstand weapons that would destroy normal power armor and provides armament that can eliminate targets that would require heavy weapons teams in other forces. But Terminator armor is rare and precious, the secrets of its construction partially lost during the Horus Heresy. Chapters possess only limited numbers of suits, and only the most experienced and proven warriors are permitted to wear them. The training required to use Terminator armor effectively takes decades. The armor's bulk and weight make it slower than standard power armor, requiring different tactics and approaches to combat. Warriors in Terminator armor learn to accept that they will draw the most dangerous fire, that they will lead the most critical assaults, that their survival is secondary to the mission's success. The psychological transformation involved in becoming a Terminator veteran is subtle but significant. These Marines have survived decades or centuries of warfare. They have seen countless brothers fall, fought enemies that most Imperial citizens do not know exist, and witnessed horrors that would break lesser beings. They have become hardened to a degree that makes even other space marines seem soft by comparison. They do not fear death because they have stood at its threshold so many times. They do not doubt because doubt leads to hesitation, and hesitation leads to failure. They are the ultimate expression of what a space marine can become through experience and survival. But beyond even these elite warriors exist formations that represent the absolute pinnacle of transhuman capability. Organizations whose very existence stretches the boundaries of what the Adeptus Astartes can achieve. The pinnacle, Grey Knights and Custodes. If standard space marines represent the Imperium's ultimate warriors, then the Grey Knights and Adeptus Custodes represent something beyond even that exalted status. These are not merely enhanced humans or even transhumans in the traditional sense. They are the result of genetic engineering and training regimens that make the already intense space marine creation process seem almost gentle by comparison. The Grey Knights are the Imperium's premier demon hunters, space marines specifically created to fight the entities of the warp. They are the chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus, the inquisitorial order dedicated to combating demonic threats. And their existence is one of the Imperium's most closely guarded secrets. Most Imperial citizens do not know they exist. Most space marines have never heard of them. This secrecy is necessary because the knowledge the Grey Knights possess about chaos would be deeply dangerous in the wrong hands. The creation of a Grey Knight begins similarly to a standard space marine, with selection and the implantation of the 19 gene seed organs. But the differences start almost immediately. First, Grey Knights are recruited not from random recruiting worlds, but from specific populations. They seek out individuals with nascent psychic ability combined with exceptional mental resilience and purity of spirit. Some recruits are children who showed psychic potential but whose gifts were too weak for the black ships to claim them. Others are drawn from populations that have been tested for genetic compatibility with the Grey Knight's unique gene seed. Because every Grey Knight is a psyker, the transformation process includes extensive psychic training from the very beginning. Aspirants learn to control their powers even as their bodies undergo the physical transformation. This dual development is extraordinarily dangerous. Many aspirants do not survive the process, their powers manifesting in uncontrolled ways during surgery or recovery that result in their own deaths and sometimes the deaths of those around them. The Grey Knights also utilize gene seed that is said to come directly from the Emperor himself, not from any Primarch. This gene seed is incredibly pure and stable, producing few mutations and providing resistance to chaos corruption that exceeds even the already impressive resistance of standard space marines. The price of this stability is that the gene seed is even more selective than standard Astartes gene seed, rejecting the vast majority of aspirants during implantation. Beyond the physical transformation, Grey Knights undergo psychological conditioning that is extreme even by space marine standards. They are programmed with knowledge of demons and chaos that would drive most humans insane. They learn the true names of greater demons, the nature of the chaos gods, and the methods by which reality can be warped through warp energies. They memorize 666 rituals of banishment and protection. They are tattooed with wards and hexagrammic symbols that provide additional protection against psychic attack. Their armor is inscribed with prayers and holy verses in languages most scholars have never heard. The result is a warrior who is not just physically superior to baseline humans, but who possesses capabilities that seem miraculous. A Grey Knight can speak a demon's true name and banish it back to the warp. He can stride through corruption that would transform a normal space marine into a chaos spawn. He can sense the presence of chaos, taint with perfect accuracy, identifying heretics and possessed individuals at a glance. His psychic powers are formidable, allowing him to create walls of flame, project barriers of psychic force, or smite enemies with blasts of pure warp energy. But this power comes at a cost. Grey Knights can never integrate normally with the wider Imperium. Their very existence must remain secret. When they fight alongside other Imperial forces, those witnesses are typically mind-wiped afterward, their memories of the Grey Knight's presence erased or altered. Grey Knights have little connection to the rest of humanity, existing in a state of perpetual isolation, where only their brothers in arms and the Inquisitors they serve understand what they truly are. They cannot have normal relationships, cannot share their experiences with anyone who has not undergone the same transformation, cannot exist as anything except weapons aimed at humanity's most terrible enemies. The Adeptus Custodes represent a different approach to creating the ultimate warrior. Where Space Marines are mass-produced weapons created through standardized processes, each custodian is a unique masterpiece of genetic engineering, individually crafted rather than manufactured from a template. The process of creating a custodian makes the Space Marine transformation seem crude and rushed by comparison. The selection for custodians begins with infants, children taken from noble families of terror before they are old enough to speak. These infants undergo genetic testing more extensive than any Space Marine chapter could perform, their DNA analyzed at a level of detail that takes months to complete. Only children who meet incredibly stringent criteria are accepted, and even then, many will not survive the transformation. The transformation itself begins almost immediately and continues for years. Where Space Marine organs are implanted one at a time over a multi-year period, the custodian transformation is a continuous process of genetic alteration, surgery, and alchemical treatment. The child's very genetic code is rewritten at a fundamental level, not just enhanced but rebuilt entirely. Every cell in the body is altered, every system enhanced. The process is so intensive that it can only be performed by the Emperor's own geneticists and only using resources available nowhere else in the Imperium. The result is a warrior who is, by any objective measure, superior to a Space Marine in every physical capacity. Custodians are faster, stronger, tougher, and more resilient than even Astartes. They possess reaction times that allow them to track and respond to threats that Space Marines would struggle to perceive. Their combat training, which begins in early childhood and continues throughout their lives, makes them masters of warfare to a degree that even veteran Space Marines struggle to match. A single custodian is said to be worth at least 10 Space Marines in combat, and this is not exaggeration or propaganda, but simple observation of their capabilities. But the differences go beyond mere physical enhancement. Custodians are created to be not just warriors, but also philosophers, scholars, and artists. They receive education in history, art, literature, and governance that Space Marines never experience. They are expected to understand the larger context of their actions, to think strategically at levels that most Space Marines leave to their officers. They serve as the Emperor's companions as much as his bodyguards, expected to provide counsel and conversation as well as protection. This broader education means that custodians maintain more of their humanity than Space Marines do. They are not emotionally stunted or psychologically conditioned to the point of losing individual personality. They can appreciate beauty, engage in philosophical discussions, and form relationships in ways that Space Marines struggle with. But this retention of humanity also means they feel the weight of their duty more acutely. They understand exactly what they are protecting and what will be lost if they fail. The price custodians pay is different from, but no less significant than, what Space Marines sacrifice. They can never leave the Emperor's service. They can never have families or normal lives. They exist in a state of perpetual vigilance, knowing that they guard the most important being in the Imperium and that any failure on their part could doom humanity entirely. The psychological pressure of this responsibility is immense. Custodians who fail in their duty, even through no fault of their own, often seek death in battle rather than living with the shame of their failure. Both Grey Knights and Custodians represent the absolute peak of what can be achieved through genetic modification and training within the Imperium's technological capabilities. They are answers to the question of what it takes to become the ultimate weapon. demonstrating that even the impressive Space Marine transformation can be surpassed with sufficient resources and expertise. But both organizations also demonstrate the fundamental truth that underlies all such transformations. The more effective the weapon, the greater the sacrifice required to create it. Grey Knights lose their connection to normal humanity, existing in a state of isolation and secrecy. Custodians are created from infancy and can never know any existence except their duty to the Emperor. Both pay prices that make the Space Marine transformation, terrible as it is, seem almost merciful by comparison. The price of power. To understand what it truly takes to become the Imperium's most powerful weapon, we must acknowledge not just the physical transformations and the training required, but the deeper costs that are rarely discussed in Imperial propaganda. We must recognize what is lost in the process of creating these transhuman warriors. What parts of humanity are sacrificed on the altar of necessity? Consider the physical changes first. A Space Marine is no longer fully human in body. His organs have been replaced or supplemented with artificial analogues. His skeletal structure has been reinforced to the point where it more closely resembles ceramite than bone. His muscles are dense masses of synthetic fiber woven through with natural tissue. His blood is a chemical cocktail that would be toxic to baseline humans. He is, by any reasonable definition, a different species from the human he once was. This physical divergence creates profound psychological effects. A Space Marine can never return to normal human society. His size alone makes integration impossible. He cannot fit through doors designed for baseline humans, cannot sit in normal furniture, cannot wear normal clothing. His strength means he must constantly moderate his movements to avoid accidentally destroying objects or injuring normal humans with casual contact. Simple activities that baseline humans take for granted become complicated or impossible. More fundamentally, the physical needs of a Space Marine diverge from human norms in ways that create alienation. He does not need sleep in the same way, experiencing rest as a series of fractured micronaps rather than prolonged unconsciousness. His dietary requirements are vast and unusual, requiring him to consume amounts of food that would be excessive for baseline humans, and sometimes substances that normal humans would find inedible. His reproductive capability has been eliminated entirely. The energy and resources that would support sexual function redirected toward combat performance. This last point deserves emphasis. Space Marines are sterile, incapable of reproduction. This is a deliberate feature of their design, not an accident. Sexual desire and the drive to reproduce are seen as distractions from duty, weaknesses that could compromise a warrior's effectiveness. By removing this aspect of humanity, the transformation ensures that Space Marines will never be torn between duty and family, will never hesitate in battle because they hope to survive and return to lovers or children. But this means Space Marines can never form families, can never experience romantic love as baseline humans understand it, can never participate in one of the most fundamental aspects of human existence. They are eternal soldiers, capable of brotherhood with their fellow Astartes, but isolated from the normal human experience of intimate relationships. Some Space Marines report that they do not miss what they never had, that the conditioning and indoctrination has successfully eliminated any desire for such connections. Others, particularly those few who retain clear memories of their lives before transformation, speak of a sense of loss, an awareness that something fundamental has been taken from them. The psychological conditioning that creates a Space Marine goes beyond mere training or education. It is systematic brainwashing designed to replace the original personality with something more useful for the chapter's purposes. Through hypnotherapy, memory conditioning, and psycho-indoctrination, the aspirant's mind is reprogrammed at deep levels. His memories of life before selection are deliberately obscured or altered. His emotional responses are dulled and focused. His very identity is reshaped to prioritize duty over personal desires. The result is a being who thinks differently from normal humans. Space Marines do not experience emotion with the same intensity that baseline humans do. Fear, sadness, joy, excitement, all of these are muted, dampened to prevent them from interfering with battlefield performance. What remains is primarily anger, which serves the warrior's purpose, and loyalty, which keeps him bound to his chapter and the Emperor. Other emotions are present but distant, experienced intellectually rather than viscerally. This emotional dulling means Space Marines struggle to relate to baseline humans in anything beyond a superficial way. They cannot truly empathize with normal human concerns, because those concerns seem trivial compared to the existential threats they face daily. A civilian worried about feeding their family or maintaining their livelihood seems almost incomprehensible to a being whose existence is defined entirely by warfare. Space Marines often develop contempt for baseline humans, seeing them as weak, as problems to be solved or protected, rather than as peers worthy of respect. The memories of who they were before transformation fade with time, deliberately eroded by the conditioning process and replaced with implanted memories that serve the chapter's narrative. Many older Space Marines cannot clearly remember their families, their childhood friends, or the specific details of their early lives. They retain only vague impressions. Emotional echoes without clear content. This memory loss means they can never truly return to who they were, even if the physical transformation were somehow reversed. The person they were before has been systematically destroyed, leaving only the weapon they have become. Consider also the practical realities of a Space Marine's existence. They can never retire, never step back from warfare, and live peaceful lives. Most chapters have no provision for Marines who wish to stop fighting. They serve until they die in battle, and death in battle is considered the only honorable end for an Astartes. Those rare Marines who survive long enough to become too injured for frontline service might be placed in positions as trainers or administrators, but they remain part of the chapter, forever defined by their role as warriors. The lifespan of a Space Marine, while potentially extending for centuries given their enhanced biology, is typically cut short by the constant warfare they experience. The Imperium is perpetually at war, and Space Marines are deployed to the most dangerous battlefields against the most terrible enemies. Survival rates are poor. Most Marines die within their first few decades of service. Those who survive to become veterans are already exceptional, and those who survive for centuries are vanishingly rare. But even those rare individuals who survive for extended periods find that survival brings its own costs. They watch generation after generation of brothers die. They see worlds they defended fall to ruin decades or centuries later. They witness the slow decay of the Imperium, the gradual loss of knowledge and capability that characterizes the current age. They become increasingly isolated, their experiences so far removed from those of younger Marines that communication becomes difficult. Many ancient Astartes report feeling like ghosts, present but not truly part of the world around them, sustained by duty alone. And what of the psychological trauma that comes from perpetual warfare? Space Marines face horrors that would break normal human minds. They fight demons that defy natural law, witness corruption that transforms humans into monsters, see entire populations slaughtered by Xenos that view humanity as nothing but food. They participate in exterminatus actions where entire worlds are destroyed to prevent corruption from spreading. They execute civilians who have been compromised by chaos. They make impossible decisions where all options involve death and suffering. The conditioning that makes Space Marines effective warriors also limits their ability to process this trauma in healthy ways. They cannot express doubt without risking punishment from their chaplains. They cannot show weakness without seeming unreliable to their brothers. They cannot discuss their experiences with baseline humans who lack the context to understand. The trauma accumulates, layer upon layer, creating psychological burdens that would crush normal humans, but that Space Marines simply carry, unable to set them down or address them meaningfully. Some chapters recognize these issues and provide mechanisms for Marines to cope. The Space Wolves' ritualistic drinking and feasting serves a psychological purpose beyond brotherhood. The Blood Angels' artistic pursuits provide outlets for emotions that cannot be expressed through violence. The Salamanders' connection to their families and homeworld population provides anchoring relationships that other chapters forbid. But even these mechanisms are limited, constrained by the demands of duty and the reality that Space Marines can never truly escape their roles as weapons. And underneath all of this lurks a question that most Space Marines never consciously confront, but that shapes their existence nonetheless. Are they still human? Have they transcended humanity and become something greater? Or have they simply lost their humanity and become monsters wrapped in noble purpose? Can a being who has been so fundamentally altered, whose mind has been reprogrammed, and whose emotions have been dulled, truly claim to be human in any meaningful sense? Different chapters answer this question in different ways. Some, like the Space Wolves, emphasize their connection to humanity, seeing themselves as protectors who remain fundamentally human despite their enhancements. Others, like the Dark Angels, seem to embrace their separation from baseline humanity, viewing themselves as a distinct caste with duties and concerns that transcend normal human understanding. Still others never address the question at all, accepting their roles without philosophical inquiry. But regardless of how individual Marines answer this question, the objective reality remains. They have paid a terrible price for their power. They have sacrificed their bodies, their minds, their identities, their connections to normal humanity, their ability to experience emotions fully, their capacity for lives beyond warfare, and ultimately their very existence as individuals rather than weapons. They have given up everything that most humans consider essential to a meaningful life in exchange for the capability to defend humanity against threats that would otherwise overwhelm it. Is this sacrifice justified? The Imperium says yes, argues that without these warriors, humanity would have fallen long ago. Space Marines themselves typically accept this logic, their conditioning ensuring that they believe their sacrifice serves a higher purpose. But whether any individual would choose this fate if they truly understood it beforehand, if they could see clearly what they would lose in exchange for what they would gain, remains an open question that the Imperium prefers not to examine too closely. Other weapons of the Imperium. While Space Marines represent the most iconic and numerous of the Imperium's superweapons, they are far from the only warriors who undergo transformations that separate them from baseline humanity. Understanding the full scope of what it takes to become the Imperium's most powerful weapon requires examining these other specialized forces and the unique sacrifices each demands. Consider the Titan Princeps, the individuals who pilot the god engines known as Imperial Titans. These walking fortresses stand dozens or hundreds of meters tall, armed with weapons that can level cities and shielded by void shields that can withstand orbital bombardment. A single Titan can turn the tide of a planetary war, and the Titan legions of the Adeptus Mechanicus are rightfully feared throughout the galaxy. But piloting a Titan is not a matter of simply climbing into a cockpit and pulling levers. The machine is too large, too complex, too powerful for normal human reflexes to control. Instead, the Princeps undergoes a process called mind-impulse linking, where his consciousness is directly interfaced with the Titan's machine spirit through neural implants and specialized technology. When linked, the Princeps does not merely control the Titan. He becomes the Titan, experiencing its actions as his own, feeling damage to its hull as pain in his own body. This process is profoundly dangerous. The machine spirits of Titans are ancient and powerful, personalities that have developed over millennia of warfare. When a Princeps links with a Titan, there is always a risk that the machine spirit will overwhelm his consciousness, dominating him rather than being controlled by him. Many Princeps gradually lose their individual identities over years of linking, becoming more machine than human, their personalities subsumed into the greater gestalt of the Titan itself. The transformation begins with extensive neural augmentation. Princeps candidates, typically drawn from the ranks of the Collegia Titanica's supporting personnel, undergo surgery to implant the manifold, a complex system of neural interfaces that allows connection to a Titan. These surgeries involve extensive modification of the brain and nervous system, creating pathways that do not naturally exist in human biology. Many candidates do not survive the augmentation process, their brains unable to adapt to the foreign systems being integrated into them. Those who survive the initial augmentation must then undergo years of training, learning to link with progressively more powerful Titans. They start with Scout Titans, the smallest class, and gradually work up to larger engines as they prove their capability. Each step up in size and power increases the risk of being overwhelmed by the machine spirit. Some princeps never advance beyond smaller Titans because their will is insufficient to dominate the spirits of larger engines. But even those who successfully become princeps of mighty battle Titans or Emperor-class engines pay terrible prices for their power. The constant linking takes a physical toll, burning out the nervous system gradually. Princeps often develop tremors, seizures, and neurological conditions that worsen over time. Many become unable to function outside their Titans, spending most of their time connected to the machines because only in that linked state do they feel complete. Their personalities change, becoming more aggressive, more mechanistic, less capable of normal human interaction. The psychological isolation is profound. A princeps exists in a state where he is neither fully human nor fully machine, accepted by neither. Normal humans fear and revere Titans and their princeps in equal measure. The tech priests of the Mechanicus view princeps as necessary, but somewhat suspect, beings who claim to control machine spirits rather than serving them. Other princeps understand, but relationships between princeps are often competitive rather than supportive, each one measuring themselves against the others. The Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, represent a different kind of transformation, one more spiritual than physical. These warrior women do not undergo genetic modification or extensive surgical augmentation. They remain baseline human in their biology, but they are transformed nonetheless through faith and training that molds them into weapons just as effective as many genetically enhanced warriors. The selection for the sororitas begins with the Schola Progenium, orphanages maintained by the ecclesiarchy, where children who have lost their parents in imperial service are raised. These children, known as progena, receive education and training that emphasizes discipline, faith, and service. The most promising female progena are selected for consideration by the orders of the Adepta Sororitas, beginning their transformation into Sisters of Battle. The training is intense and unforgiving. Progena selected for the sororitas undergo years of conditioning that emphasizes absolute faith in the emperor as a god, unwavering loyalty to the ecclesiarchy, and willingness to sacrifice anything, including their own lives, for the imperial creed. They learn to use a wide variety of weapons, master tactics suited to the kinds of warfare the sisters conduct, and study the nature of heresy and corruption so they can recognize and destroy it. But the transformation goes deeper than mere training. The faith that a sister of battle develops is not normal religious devotion, but something more intense and profound. Through constant prayer, meditation, ritual, and the influence of the saint whose life her order honors, a sister develops faith that can have tangible effects. This faith allows sisters to perform acts of faith, miraculous moments where their belief manifests as supernatural abilities. A sister might shrug off wounds that should have killed her, strike with impossible accuracy, or inspire her squad to fight beyond their normal capabilities. These acts of faith are not psychic powers, which the sororitas view with deep suspicion as sources of corruption. They are considered divine intervention, the emperor himself working through his most faithful servants. But regardless of their source, they demonstrate that the transformation into a sister of battle changes the individual at a fundamental level, granting capabilities that cannot be explained through training and equipment alone. The price sisters pay is different from genetic modification, but no less significant. They live lives of absolute devotion where normal human pleasures and relationships are denied to them. They cannot marry or have children. They cannot pursue personal ambitions beyond service to the ecclesiarchy. They must be willing to die at any moment, to sacrifice themselves without hesitation if their martyrdom serves the emperor's purpose. The psychological pressure of maintaining such intense faith while witnessing the horrors of war creates strains that many cannot bear. The Officio Assassinorum represents yet another approach to creating ultimate warriors. The Imperium's assassin temples transform humans into living weapons designed for specific types of killing. Each temple has its own methods and produces its own kind of assassin, but all share certain characteristics: extensive physical and mental conditioning, surgical and chemical enhancements, and training that eliminates everything except perfect competence in their chosen method of assassination. The Vindikar Temple creates snipers of inhuman skill, capable of making impossible shots across distances that would defeat any normal marksman. Vindicare candidates undergo modifications that enhance their vision, steady their hands, and slow their metabolisms to allow them to wait motionless for days. They are trained in patience beyond normal human capability, in observation that misses nothing, in the mathematics of trajectory and wind and target movement. A Vindikar assassin can kill from miles away with a single shot, striking targets that do not know they are being hunted. The Calidus Temple produces infiltrators and shapeshifters. Calidus assassins are treated with polymorphine, a chemical that allows them to physically alter their appearance, changing their faces, bodies, even their voices to impersonate targets. They study acting, psychology, and social engineering, becoming masters of deception. They can infiltrate the most secure locations, appear as trusted advisors or servants, and strike when the target is completely vulnerable. The Eversaw Temple creates berserker killers, humans transformed into engines of slaughter through extensive surgical modification, combat drug implantation, and psychological conditioning that removes all restraint. Eversaw assassins are kept in stasis between missions because their enhancements are so extreme that they cannot function in normal society. When deployed, they kill everything in their path with inhuman speed and ferocity, fueled by combat drugs that push their bodies far beyond natural limits. Most Eversaw assassins do not survive many missions, their bodies burned out by the extremes they are pushed to. The Calexus Temple trains pariahs, humans born with the pariah gene that makes them psychic blanks. These individuals have no presence in the warp and actively suppress psychic activity around them. They are trained as anti-psyker assassins, able to approach psychic targets who cannot sense their presence and kill with weapons that channel their anti-psychic nature. Culexus assassins are so disturbing to be near that even normal humans feel deep unease in their presence, a primal revulsion at beings who are somehow less than fully real. Each of these temples creates killers of frightening capability, but the transformations they impose are brutal and dehumanizing. Assassins lose their original identities entirely, becoming tools of the Imperium with no lives outside their missions. They are deployed only for the most critical targets, then return to their temples to await the next mission. They have no families, no relationships, no existence beyond their function as weapons. Many do not survive long, killed in action or broken by the extreme modifications and conditioning they undergo. Even among baseline Imperial forces, there exist warriors who undergo transformations that separate them from normal humans. The stormtroopers of the Militarum, Tempestus, elite soldiers drawn from the Schola Progenium, receive training and conditioning that produces warriors far more capable than standard guardsmen. While they lack genetic modification or extensive surgical enhancement. Their psychological conditioning and combat training makes them fearsome opponents. But perhaps the most extreme example of transformation among baseline humans is found in those who undergo conversion into archoflagellants, a punishment reserved for the worst criminals in the ecclesiarchy's judgment. These unfortunates are surgically modified with combat enhancements, then fitted with pacifier helms that control their actions through pain and neural stimulation. They are no longer truly human, reduced to weapons that are unleashed upon the Imperium's enemies, fighting with inhuman ferocity until they are destroyed. The transformation into an archoflagellant is a fate worse than death, an existence of constant agony and loss of all will, but it demonstrates the extremes to which the Imperium will go to create weapons from human flesh. All of these examples illustrate a fundamental truth about the Imperium. It views human life as a resource to be exploited for its survival. Children are taken and transformed into space marines. Psychers are molded into librarians or sacrificed to fuel the Emperor's existence. Orphans are trained as sisters of battle or stormtroopers. Criminals become servitors or archoflagellants. The talented become princeps or assassins. In every case, the individual is secondary to the function they can serve, the weapon they can become. This utilitarian approach to human life is not cruelty for its own sake, though it may seem cruel to those unfamiliar with the threats the Imperium faces. It is necessity born of desperation, a civilization that has recognized it faces extinction and has decided that any sacrifice is justified if it purchases humanity's survival. The Imperium does not apologize for the transformations it imposes because it believes the alternative, the victory of chaos or Xenos or any of 1,000 other threats, would be infinitely worse. But this does not make the suffering any less real or the prices paid any less terrible. Every weapon the Imperium creates was once a human being with dreams and potential that extended beyond warfare. Every transformation represents a life that might have held joy, love, achievement, meaning that was sacrificed for the capability to kill more efficiently. Whether these sacrifices are truly necessary or whether they have simply become self-perpetuating, traditions maintained because they have always been maintained, is a question the Imperium does not permit itself to ask. Conclusion: the weight of being a weapon. We have followed the path from human child to ultimate weapon, examined the surgeries and conditioning and training that create the Imperium's mightiest warriors, acknowledged the prices paid in humanity and identity and normal life. Now we must address the question that underlies all of this. What does it truly take to become the Imperium's most powerful weapon? The physical requirements are immense. Genetic compatibility, that only a tiny fraction of humanity possesses. The ability to survive 19 organ implantations, each of which kills more aspirants than it perfects. The physiological resilience to adapt to modifications that fundamentally alter how the body functions. The physical potential to endure years of brutal training that would kill baseline humans within days. The psychological requirements are equally demanding. The mental flexibility to have your identity systematically dismantled and replaced. The emotional resilience to witness horrors that would break normal minds. The capacity to kill without hesitation or remorse when killing is required. The willingness to sacrifice everything, including your own life, for abstract concepts like duty and faith. The ability to function without the emotional connections and relationships that most humans consider essential to meaningful existence. But beyond these requirements lies something deeper and more disturbing. The willingness to stop being human, because that is what the transformation ultimately demands. Whether through genetic modification that makes you a different species, conditioning that removes your capacity for normal emotional response, or faith that subsumes individual identity into collective purpose, becoming the Imperium's ultimate weapon requires accepting that you will never be fully human again. For Space Marines, this means accepting that you are a transhuman weapon, superior to baseline humans in capability, but isolated from them in experience and nature. You will never have a family, never retire, Never experience life beyond war. Your brothers in arms will be your only real relationships, and you will watch them die, generation after generation, while you endure. Your memories of who you were before will fade, replaced by conditioning and implanted knowledge. The person you were will die, so that the weapon you become can serve. For Grey Knights, it means accepting even greater isolation, existing as a secret warrior who can never be acknowledged, whose victories will never be celebrated because they can never be revealed. You will know things about the universe's nature that would drive normal humans insane, carry knowledge that makes you perpetually dangerous to be around. Your only peers will be other Grey Knights, and even they cannot fully share the burden each of you carries. For custodians, it means accepting that you were created from infancy to serve a single purpose, that you never had a choice, that your entire existence has been predetermined. You are not an individual who became a warrior, but a weapon that was given just enough consciousness to serve effectively. Your capabilities exceed those of almost any other warrior in the galaxy, but you will spend that power guarding a corpse emperor who may or may not still be conscious, serving a duty that seems increasingly futile as the millennia pass and the Imperium slowly crumbles. For all the Imperium's weapons, the ultimate cost is the same. You cease to be a person and become a function. Your worth is measured solely in your utility. Your value ends when you can no longer serve. Your existence has meaning only in relation to your purpose. Everything else, all the aspects of life that humans throughout history have celebrated and pursued, the love and art and joy and meaning, all of it is stripped away or denied so that you can be a more effective tool of war. And the truly horrifying aspect of this reality is that it is probably necessary. The Imperium faces threats that cannot be defeated by normal humans, no matter how brave or well-equipped. The Chaos Gods actively work to corrupt and destroy humanity. The Tyranids view humans as nothing but biomass to be consumed. The Necrons consider humanity an infestation on worlds that were theirs long before Terra's sun ignited. Without its superhuman warriors, its transhuman weapons, its living tools of war, the Imperium would fall. This necessity does not make the sacrifice any less terrible. It does not justify the suffering or redeem the loss of humanity. It simply explains why the Imperium continues to pay these prices, continues to transform children into weapons, continues to sacrifice individuals for the collective survival of the species. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no good choice, only terrible necessities and the willingness to pay whatever price survival demands. For those aspirants standing in selection chambers across 1,000,000 worlds, looking up at the Space Marines who will determine their fates, this is what truly lies ahead. Not glory or honor, though propaganda claims both. Not a better life, though it will certainly be different. Not heroism in any traditional sense, though they will commit acts that historians might call heroic. What lies ahead is transformation so complete that the person who enters the fortress monastery will not be the person who eventually emerges, if they emerge at all. Most will not survive. They will die on operating tables or in training accidents, or from complications that even the apothecaries cannot predict or prevent. Their gene seed will be harvested and implanted in the next generation of aspirants, creating a cycle where death literally gives rise to new life. Their names might be remembered in the chapter's rolls of honor, or they might simply be statistics, acceptable losses in the grand calculus of creating the Imperium's defenders. Those who do survive, who complete the transformation and become full battle brothers, will join an organization that has existed for 10,000 years and will likely exist for 10,000 more. They will fight battles they can barely imagine against enemies they do not yet know exist. They will serve with distinction or die trying, because there is no third option. And when they die, whether it takes decades or centuries, their deaths will purchase moments, perhaps hours, perhaps only seconds, of additional survival for the Imperium they serve. Is this a worthy trade? Is the power gained worth the humanity lost? Can we justify the transformation of children into weapons, when those children cannot truly comprehend what they are agreeing to? These are questions the Imperium does not ask because it cannot afford to ask them. To question the necessity of space marines is to question the foundations of imperial society. To doubt the righteousness of this sacrifice is to invite the possibility that all the suffering has been for nothing. So the transformation continues, as it has for millennia, as it will for however long the Imperium endures. Children are selected from recruiting worlds and brought to fortress monasteries. Aspirants undergo surgeries and conditioning that kill most and transform the rest. New space marines emerge to replace those who have fallen, perpetuating a cycle that feeds on human life and produces weapons of war. The great machine of imperial military power grinds forward, consuming individuals and producing warriors, indifferent to the cost because survival demands it. And in the end, perhaps that is the truest answer to what it takes to become the Imperium's most powerful weapon. It takes everything, every aspect of your humanity, every possibility for a normal life, every connection to the species you are supposedly defending, every choice about who you might become, every dream of a future beyond war. It takes your body and remakes it into something that is no longer fully human. It takes your mind and reshapes it until you can barely remember who you once were. It takes your entire existence and dedicates it to a single purpose, serving as a weapon in an endless war that may never be won. The Imperium asks this of its children because it believes it must, because it sees no other path to survival, because it has been paying these prices for so long that it no longer remembers how to do anything else. Whether this is wisdom or madness, necessity or tradition gone toxic, is impossible to say from within the system. All we can do is observe the process, acknowledge the costs, and recognize that every space marine, every custodian, every weapon the Imperium creates represents a human life sacrificed on the altar of humanity's collective survival. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and weapons, once forged, exist only to be used until they break. This is what it takes to become the Imperium's most powerful weapon. This is the price that must be paid, over and over, generation after generation, until the long night finally claims everything, or the Emperor rises again to lead humanity towards some better future. If you found this deep dive into the creation of the Imperium's ultimate warriors valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Stories of Hammer for more comprehensive explorations of Warhammer 40K lore. There are countless more stories to tell from the grim darkness of the far future, and your support helps make it possible to continue bringing these narratives to life in the depth they deserve. Until next time, may the Emperor protect you.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any. And yeah, sleep well.